Ready? How'd T County come about for you?
Well, I talked with them last year when the job was open after Adam left. Um, and they obviously went with a different direction. About the same time I was talking with Robertsdale. Um, Actually, I talked with Brookwood when their job was open last year as well. So
Okay.
we, and Kim and I had, I think we were hoping to get back, somewhere in the, greater Birmingham area, which I'll certainly include Tuscaloosa in that.
Sure.
And ideally, I, I wanted to get back to Region 3. And, when you start looking at, what's a fit, the county just always seemed like it'd be a pretty good fit for us. So, when Brian left, Daryl Williams, the principal here, Stacy Lawler, the AD for the county, they reached out to see if I'd have any interest, and we just so happened that we did. And I know they threw a net out there to see, see who was going to come on, and fortunately, we're here, so we're excited about it. It's a it feels like home. It's good to be back in the area, and we've just I came in last Friday. The board didn't meet till Monday to approve me, but I was able to start looking around and seeing some things Friday. So it's been I've been here a week now, and although I'm heading back to down south today to try to get the house ready to sell. So that'll be fun. Fortunately, there was, we had started to unpack probably about, 2-3 months ago, when we kind of, we're just when we had time. That's been the problem. It took us, when it probably was, we were in the house at Oak Mountain probably 2 years before we got everything, fully unpacked. So, we've had some, so now that's been I think, this 3 moves maybe, and then we've got boxes I haven't opened any of those. So I need to get a dumpster. We're just going to start tossing.
Start over.
Yeah, we need to streamline this move as much as possible. But it's good. The kids, so I've had the kids now for a week, and just trying to really just build relationships. Get some trust built on both ends. It's more important for me to earn their trust right now. Because they've had, this is coach number 4 since, December, January of a year ago. And, they came back from Christmas expecting, Adam to be their coach. And, here I am. This is number 4. So it's been I think for them, it's been, up and down. It's been a roller coaster. So it's imperative that we come in and just, create some stability, build that trust, and let them know, we're not going anywhere. And this is, certainly where we want to be. And I think Kim is, she's excited about getting back in the area. And, our oldest daughter got 2 degrees from the university here. So we spent a lot of time coming down to see her, and my youngest son, he's at Sanford, so he's running track up there. So it'd be good to be a little closer to him. And during the indoor season, when they've got all those meets at the Crossplex, that's a whole lot easier to drive, from here than it was, even when we were in Scottsboro, but certainly from down south. So it makes that better. But just just fortunate, Lord kind of. I think too many times we throw God around when it's convenient, but I think for us, in this, just the way things, way they played out, I really just very thankful for the way it played out, and just a set of circumstances that I think there were just a bunch of things that had to fall in place, and they did, and we're grateful for it.
Yeah. Is it harder, like like, because you're coming in. I mean, it's April. Like, is it
No.
harder to build those relationships? Like coming in, usually these things happen January, December, that kind of deal.
Yeah, I don't know if it's harder per se. You just don't have as much time.
Sure,
But I think whenever you come on board as far as a relationship building, I mean, that is what it is. I mean, I think when you look at it and you say, all right, it's April the 11th, and then we play a game August the 23rd. That makes it, the urgency is amped up quite a bit, but
sure,
you preach that anyway. You preach that sense of urgency all the time. So now it is, it certainly gives it legs for us right now. But no, I mean, I don't know that it's harder. I think, again, that just takes time, and that just, it's just going to be earned. I think that's the reality. That's going to be earned. And, we certainly have enough time. When I took the job at Scottsboro, I got there, it was towards the end of March, but when I got the job, I think they went on spring break the next week. So I didn't get there until, gosh, I want to say maybe April the 2nd. So that was a late, that was a late deal as well. And I think we were able to come in and build that trust there. And, the difference here is we're not going to do spring practice. So we've got, from that vantage point, I think it allows me not to be distracted from that relationship part, because if I was sitting there saying, all right, we're going to have spring practice in 3 weeks, that adds a whole nother set of problems. And then maybe you would, maybe I'd miss a thing or two with regard to relationships. And I think, going back and looking what we did at Scottsboro that first year, because we did do spring that first year. And I do think in a sense, we were probably rushed on some things. And with the extra week in fall camp, I'm a spring practice guy. I like spring practice. Next year, I expect us to do spring practice. But it is it does give us, a chance to, you can, the schemes, all that stuff is great, but if you don't have trust, then it doesn't, you don't have a hill of beans. And so that's what we're going to focus on here, really up until, until I, retire and leave this place. So
yeah.
that I don't think you can ever, you can't ever ignore that side of things.
No. I was looking back because you mentioned we'll obviously talk about Region 3, but I was looking back at your years at Oak Mountain and facing Tuscaloosa County, 5-2 against your new school, but more than 5-2 in records. Like I think 4 of those games were at T County. It looks like 2015, 16, 18, and 2020. Yeah. Are you able to like as a coach, can you remember any of those and any standout moments?
Well, my wife will fuss because I remember more of those than other things. So she fusses all the time that when it comes to ball games, whether I've coached them or played in them, that I remember those better than I remember other things. And she's probably, she's got she certainly has a point there. And, but no, I remember, that 2015 game, was, I think that 15-7 was the final of that game, or 15-8. I can't remember, but it was, I know we ran a little, 2-point conversion off our motor hole or swinging gate, whatever people want to call it. And, I remember that being, we broke a long run, in the third quarter just to kind of to break that open. 2018, that was a game we had, or was it? Yeah, 2018.
10-7.
10-7. Was that the 10-7 game? There's another game in there. Maybe it was 2016. 2016 is what I'm thinking of. No, is that?
Let's see,
2016.
2016.
Did we go there again in 16?
Yeah,
2016 is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, that was a 38-18.
Yeah, so that was a game we had a little come to Jesus at halftime in that game, and we came out in the second half and played much, much better. And that was a win that sent us to the playoffs that year, although we really I did not do a good job coaching that year. the 16, and then 2018 was the 10-7 game, and that was just that was an ugly football game. Coach Holliday was over here at that point, and John was a one coach here. Those two losses were both to John, so it was. I need to. At some point I need to pay him back for it, but since he's out of coaching now, I don't know that that's going to happen. But that 10-7 game, we just, we were very, very, we were bad on offense that day. And it was just an ugly game. Both defenses played well, but, I felt like we did, there were things we needed to do and didn't. And again, if I did a bad job in 2016 and 2018, I did a miserable job coaching. So that was, you remember that. And then when we came over in 2020, that was another game that was, I felt like we were probably in control most of that game. We broke it open late. And, of course, when you got Evan Smith, he had a couple of, he broke a couple long runs in that game to give us some breathing room there at the end. But the thing you remember, and I've told the kids here, I said, regardless of what year it was that we were playing County, that the kids played hard. They always played great defense, and they always were very, very physical. And if there's anything I've heard, kind of repeatedly from people, and having been gone, from the region for the last 4 years, is that maybe, some of that's been lost. I don't know. I talked to somebody today, and he indicated that maybe that had been lost longer than maybe I think it had been lost. But I think the thing that, we've got to do is and looking at our kids, I think we can. I mean, we've got to prioritize defense. We've got to prioritize being physical. We've got to get stronger in the weight room. And we've had a good week, getting after it, kind of getting back to the foundation of things and working on building that strength foundation. And the thing about, you feel like you're behind, and you need to catch up in the weight room. The problem is that weight room it isn't a microwave oven. It's a crock pot. So you've got it takes some time but we're going to, we'll be persistent about it, and we'll make some progress, but the kids have responded really well. But it is it's always a great place. I remember, they always had great support, and when they came to Oak Mountain, I felt like they always traveled well. Even and those were some down years. Outside of the 2014 season, those were some down years, and I felt like the community support was there, and it certainly. In a week's time, the community here has been more than gracious to me and very, very welcoming. So, Kim, we had a parent meeting Monday night. Kim was able to make it up for that, and they were gracious to her, and so we're looking forward to just diving in and being a part of the community after I sell my house. Anybody looking to buy a house down, in Loxley, Alabama, I'll have a great deal for them.
There you go. You got to get it off your plate. Did you get any? Have you gotten any welcome back messages from some of your fellow Region 3 coaches that are familiar with you?
Well, it's at that point where there's only a couple that are still around. Mark,
Josh, and Mark, or something.
Yeah, Coach Floyd and Coach Freeman have both. They both reached out, and Mark and I talk pretty regular anyway. I mean, we've always, we probably talk. Of the coaches that are out there now, Mark and I we probably visit on the phone more than anybody. Coach Yeager, of course, he's not in the region, thank heavens, anymore. But he and I communicate pretty regular as well. But I've got one of my old coaches, Danny Ward, is with Coach Floyd up there at Hewitt, and so Josh and I talked a little bit, and both of us kind of poor mouthing the other and seeing who could win the deal. But it'll be exciting. And then Chip English, I knew Coach English when when he was at Albertville. We had we crossed paths. We never played against him. Our younger kids did, but we communicated back and forth a couple times up there, and then he and I have spoken. Coach Evans at Vestavia. We've spoken, and it's I don't know uh, Bobby Carter at Prattville. I mean, I've not had opportunity to. I mean, if I've met him, I've forgotten, and but it's I'm sure I will meet him, and that's one. He's done a heck of a job everywhere he's been. So the region had, while the faces have changed a little bit coaching wise, I don't know that it's gotten a whole lot easier, and certainly with this last round of hires, I think it's probably gotten a little bit tougher. So it'll be we've got our hands full for sure. But it's just, and I don't think until you've been in the region, and people have, when I left Oak Mountain to go to Scottsboro, there was, aren't you glad to be out of Region 3? And the honest answer was no, I wasn't. And it just, and in fact, there were times when I just missed that, because it is, every Friday night's important. You're playing against really good football teams and really good football coaches, and it certainly makes you better across the board. And I said this at Oak Mountain. I've already told our kids here. I mean, they are fortunate to be able to play in the ball games that they get to play in, where every week it means something. And even when even when you're down. Or even if you're playing it, you can't. There's no easy. There are no gimmies, and certainly, we want to make sure we're not a gimme for anybody. But it is, it's just it is a. And I said it to Ben Thomas when we spoke on Monday, and it sounded kind of goofy when I read it, but it is. It's a fun. It's fun to be in this region, and we're looking forward to being back. And now the negative is the bus trips, and I was talking with Coach Mitchell at Hillcrest the other day, so we visited. Thank heavens for that trip, because other than that, everything is everything's long. But so that's a different little mindset. We only had to make that trip once when we were at Oak Mountain, when we were coming down here, and that was every other year. So now it's we're going to be heading up to Birmingham at least 3 times a year. To make that trip. So I've got to work on my itineraries.
I was just looking at that because I hadn't seen y'all's schedule till today, and if I'm looking at it right, oh my gosh, the region ones at Thompson, at Hillcrest, at Hoover, at Hewitt-Trussville. I mean, welcome,
so
welcome back. Welcome back.
Let's get after it now. The good thing is those are all great places to play, and we'll in the Hillcrest game, and that's one of those that it just I don't think that really matters where you play. I think it's going to be big no matter what, and I think the place is going to be electric. And obviously I'd rather play them at home, but it is what it is, and we're going again we're going to make it a great we're going to get excited about it, and we're just happy to play. We'll play them in a cow pasture if we need to, but
that's right.
We're glad to play them where we get to play them.
That's right. I want to go back to Robertsdale for a minute, like from like a year or so ago when we did that podcast. They had lost 24 in a row. It was two back-to-back 0-10 seasons, and had lost the last 4 of the 22 seasons.
Year,
And then you come in. I know it didn't. The full season didn't go the way y'all wanted it to, but you start off 2-0. I'm curious, those older kids on that team, what led to those wins and just the buy-in that had to happen for them to turn that around? What was it like?
Well, part of it was just scheduling, and it was
still got to play the game.
Yeah, we matched up. We matched up better with those teams, and Chickasaw they were just they had a late coaching change, and it was I think they were behind the 8 ball in a lot of ways, and that was the one. They were the one team that we certainly had more depth than, and it was actually kind of close at halftime, and then we pulled away a little bit there in the second half. Now and then Alberta was a back and forth game, and Coach McDaniel there. Those kids. I mean, again, it's a neighborhood game. They're 5A, we were 7A, but honestly, just where we were at Robertsdale, that was a good matchup for us, and that was going to be, that was going to be a good ball game. And then, as far as, the buy-in, I mean, we just, the kids, I think anytime there's change, there's going to be a level of excitement, even if you've got, um, you know, you know, again, you're going from Coach Saban to Coach DeBoer. I mean, certainly there's going to be some anxiety, but there's always a level of excitement when you've got somebody new
Sure.
coming in, regardless of what situation that new guy's walking into. I think we were fortunate in the sense that, it had been bad. And so, anything that we did, and certainly that we did differently, the kids, that they just latched on to. So they were, we had a small senior class, but they had endured a lot. We were able to again, it came down to a trust factor, and we were able to get that. And, they battled with us there, and then we had the injury bug hit us, and then the schedule hit us, and it, I feel like it's one of those deals where there's times in the season where it just felt awful, but that if you're just looking at the scoreboard, if you're just looking at other things, I mean, it really felt like we were beating our head against a brick wall. But I go back and look at it and I say, well, how are we practicing week to week? And as the season wore on, and we had some, there were some guys that, I think we started the season with 9 through 12 with somewhere in 74, 76. I can't remember what exact number it was. We finished, I think, for the last ball game, we dressed, we went over to Daphne, and man, it was, people talk about Coach Bryant's trip to Junction, Texas, when he was at A&M. It wasn't that bad, but man, our numbers, we were below 50 that we dressed out for Daphne. And again, that's 9 through 12. That's not 10 through 12. That's 9 through 12. And, you felt it would be easy to look at the sideline, look at the numbers, and look at the attrition and say, gosh, what are we doing? But when you looked at those kids that dressed out that ball game, and the way they practiced that week and the way they practiced the week before that, and they came out and they really busted their tails, and through this past off season, those kids had they really had come a long way, and it certainly made it difficult to tell them goodbye. But it was kids are, the thing is, I don't care where you go, kids are resilient. And, if you can build that credibility, they're going to respond positively. At least that's been my experience.
Yeah, man. Did I see, maybe it was early in that season or something at a pep rally? Did I see you crowd surfing? Did I dream that?
There's some pictures that I think every place I've been of me crowd surfing at a time or two. Now it's a lot harder than it was. The first time I did it was, I think, at Oak Mountain in 2014, and
Okay.
I want to say it was we had a pep rally for the Vestavia game, and I want to say it was then, and I talked to some of the senior students there, and then, where they sat for the pep rallies, and I had a couple of guys that were baseball players, if I recall correctly, and we talked, and I said, "Hey, what do y'all think about me diving up there and going surfing?" And it was a lot easier back then, and back surgeries, a couple of knee surgeries later. I don't. The students have to work a lot harder to get me up than that first group did. But it was, you try to do something to get it. Still, you still got to have fun with these guys. These are teenagers.
That's right.
And I think anything we can do as the adults in the room to just give them something to, just to say, man, that was wild. That's like, when Coach Niblett had that deal where I think maybe they were playing Thompson. He, took off his shirt and flexed in the pep rally.
Oh, yeah.
I know he caught a lot of grief for that. Now, I will not be taking my shirt off anywhere. But, I loved it. I thought it was great. I said, again, I get, why people maybe didn't, but I thought it was awesome because again, it's just a way to, just to show, hey, I'm human too. And I like to have a little bit of fun and we're going to do it. So yeah, I don't know when we'll do it here, but it'll happen at some point.
Yeah, it'll look good with that blue.
Yeah, it will be. I didn't even think about that. It'll
Look like a
look
big
like
wave or something.
it'll look like a slow wave, but it'll get there.
That's awesome. No, I didn't see a ton of negativity about when Josh did that, but then again, I was mostly hearing from women. So,
And Josh has the body that he can do that. Cris does not have that body, and I don't know that he ever did, but at 58, he certainly doesn't
yeah,
have it.
not many of us have that
Yeah.
going for us, man. So the first year back in region, Oak Mountain comes to you pretty well, I guess about midway through the year, right before the bye week. Is that going to be just another game to you? Does that feel any other? Will that feel any other kind
Yeah,
of
I mean,
way?
and I don't want to make it to be more than it is. We had,
Sure.
again, we had a great experience at Oak Mountain, and
Yeah.
our kids went to school there, and except for my oldest, and just we still have a lot of great friends there, and certainly some great memories, and but the reality is that this game is about our kids here, and it's about their kids there. It ain't about some guy that coached there a few years ago, and
That's right.
so I'm glad they're coming here because I would rather play them at my place the first time than have to go back there
Sure.
the first time and play them. But it'll probably be. I think when we go there is when for me it'll be just because when you're on that other sideline, it just feel a little bit different. And maybe I'll talk to Coach McCombs and see if he'll let us take the home sideline that night. But I doubt that. I will not bring that up with him. But the. But
Yeah,
no,
you'll go there now and have to walk on turf too. It won't be natural grass.
yeah, that's a little bit different. We got it here, but I was telling somebody the other day. Somebody was asking me, one of my coaches here. They were complaining about the old grass, old turf at Oak Mountain, just because it was it always seemed to be damp. It always
Yeah.
I loved it. I just thought it gave us an advantage, and
Y'all style back then, yeah.
Yeah, the lights. I think they may have even replaced the lights. If I think somebody told me they replaced the lights, but it's kind of dim, out there, and then you'd get, if you ever get a little bit of a fog, I just thought it was cool.
You get
So,
that. Yeah, it's always been one of my favorite atmospheres. Now,
yeah,
I always like going out there before the turf because it was one of those deals where it was like, out of all the teams we covered, most everybody had the turf by then, and I was like, I'm going to a place that still got the natural grass.
still got grass. You're gonna get grass stain on uniform, and
Yeah, and there was one night, I don't remember what game this was, but it was a gully washer. It was awful.
yeah,
And I remember covering, because I don't go up in any press box, even if a place has it. I don't sit in the stands. I'm right there with y'all back and forth, keeping
right.
stats, charting the game. And I remember covering that whole game from the track because the sidelines were
It was just so bad.
absolutely flooded. It
Yeah,
was just a mud pit. And then post game, it's like I got to go meet you out there and try to talk. And I'm like, all right, new pair of shoes tomorrow.
if that's a game I'm thinking of, I remember thinking you need boots in games like that because I remember thinking I was going to pull my foot out of there and the shoe was going to be stuck in the mud down there.
It happens. Very very first game I covered was actually in Tuscaloosa back when I was in school. It might have been the second game I covered. It was over at TA, and I had a friend on the coaching staff back then, and so I did cover that one from the press box. But it like poured,
Yeah,
and after the game, it was that kind of deal where I met. This was when I think the head coach was Wayne Brantley. I
okay.
think was the coach back then, and met him at midfield. And after about 5 minutes standing there, it was one of those deals where I had to really try to get my feet out of the mud. Like
Yeah, make sure they were on tight.
tight. It was awful. So I'm still an advocate for natural grass, but I enjoy the ease, just as I know schools do, of
Yeah,
being able to drain, being able to use it for multiple sports, and
yeah.
there's no turnaround time that you have to wait. It drains and you're ready to go.
Ready to go. You're right.
Ready
It's
to go.
we're getting spoiled with it. But now in June, July, and August, that's hot as Hades on those things.
Yeah, I remember oh gosh, what was the year? I guess that would have been 14 when I think there were maybe a couple games there. I can't remember exactly, but Clay Chalkville was playing Niceville, Florida over at Hoover, and
Right.
not at the Met, like at the high
Yeah,
school.
at the high school. I remember that
Yeah,
game.
it was like a Saturday or something like
Yeah.
that,
I
and
scouted that game and it was hot as blazes.
we were on the field, and there were some people who, like, I remember this. Now I don't know if they're completely lying. They're probably lying a little bit, but they like stood in place for just like a little while,
Yeah.
and it was literally like the rubber on the soles of their shoes was melting.
Started
And then
melting.
they
Yeah.
had one of those on-field temperature gauges, and I don't remember the number, but it was something like on the field, it was like 124 degrees or something like
Yeah.
that. It was awful.
Yeah, that's the thing. They don't, you don't think about that. When you get that in, it's like, well, let's push the season. Let's push the start date back until about mid-September.
Seriously, I'd be fine with that. I'd be
Absolutely.
well. That's going to push us later into December though, and I'd much rather cover a game or be out in the hot than in the cold.
But everybody's on turf. That turf's a little bit warmer when it's cold too. So
Yeah, ooh, man. There's a give and
I'm
take in
with you.
all of it.
I'm with you. I like I'm a hot weather guy. I don't like cold.
Uh-uh. No, I covered who was it this past time? Oh, it was the 5A semis, Moody and Leeds,
Yeah,
and that night was it was one of those where they're like, hey, just show up expecting it to be in the teens or feel like
yeah,
it's in the teens, and I did. I wore boots to that game. Now
yeah,
that is not optimal for going up and down the sidelines, but that's what I did just to try to not freeze to death.
yeah. I think the coldest game that I've ever coached in or played in was that 2014 playoff game we had at Gaston City, and that
Oh.
weekend it was just freezing everywhere, and it was that was a second round game, and it was brutal.
I'm looking at November 14th. Yeah, and at Gadsden City, I bet too. Like they get a lot of. I would assume they get a lot of wind right there at
Yeah,
Titan
coming off
Stadium
that,
off the
off the hill,
interstate,
yeah, off the mountain, yeah.
and that place is tight. Like that's a tight sideline play. I covered a Hewitt Trustful Gadsden City game there one time, and that was probably back when it was still, maybe it was a region game, like right before 7A started in 14. I can't remember exactly, but I remember it was the first game that my wife came with me to just tag
Yeah,
along. So like I'm covering the game and she's just kind of going up and down the sideline with me. And it wasn't the coldest game that I've ever been to, but it was cold.
yeah.
And I remember her being like, "This is what you do on Friday nights," just like teaching. Usually it's fine. Usually it feels great, but it was
Yeah,
it was freezing that night at that same
I
place,
hear you.
Gadsden City, man. So 7A Region 3 now. We touched on it. Like you've got Hillcrest in now, Prattville's in now, Chelsea and Spain Park are out. Um, didn't get any easier in a lot of ways. Maybe it got harder.
Yeah, maybe a little more difficult.
What's how do you view the lay of the land there in Region 3? Like I know it's early. We're not talking rosters and matchups stuff
Yeah, I
like
mean,
that. Just the schools involved.
well, again, it's just you've got some quality schools with great football tradition, and that's what we talked about our guys today. I mean, we've got great football tradition here at County, and we've got to we need to tap into that, and obviously we want to create our own legacies here. But there's a lot of people that care an awful lot about Tuscaloosa County football and have for a long time, and these people deserve a great product. So we're going to do our best to do that. But with regard to our region, it's just again, I think it was that iron sharpens iron type deal, and of course you've got Thompson coming off of a state championship. You've got Hoover. I mean, Coach English did a phenomenal job last year at Hoover, and that's something he and I talked about. Just after the season, at some point I had to call him or do something, and just told him what a great job I thought he did, and of course Coach Floyd up there And Hewitt has done. I mean, he's had a really, really good run, and we actually now I did walk. We drove over when they played Baker last year in the playoffs. Went over and watched them, and I know he'd like to have a couple calls back in that game. I was a little surprised at that, but one does he. Coach Johnson did a great job there at Baker a year ago, and I'm anxious to see how he does up at James Clemens.
Yeah.
And I
Now
think
now you talk about selling a house and a move. Now that is a move.
that is, well, we did it a year before going from Scottsboro down there. So he and I talked about that. I think Coach Carr over at Prattville, that's going to be, again, you talk about, again, history, football history, football tradition, here in the state, Prattville's got as good as anybody. And, and I think, Bobby will do a great job of reinstilling that. And of course Oak Mountain. And I think Oak Mountain probably is, and of course I'm going to be biased there, but I mean I always enjoyed coaching there. And you go back to, to Coach Hood and just the job that he did, and I mean there's been some good football players that have that have come through there. And there's been some good football coaches that have come through there. So I mean, it is a Vestavia. Again, there's another place that I mean, good gracious, that's just I mean, since the school opened, I mean they've been as good as anybody. So I mean, just year in and year out, and having that tradition and doing that, just doing it the right way at a high level. And I know Coach Evans is doing the same. He's and again he played there, so he's got it's and that's always I think that's always a special deal, and I know he's enjoying that. But it's it is a it's just it's a rush. I mean, and I'm, and again, to go back to an old coach that was in this region at one point, another guy, it's just a blast. And then we're looking forward to it. I have no idea. Obviously, I think if you look at, just at this point, who do you look to be, at the front of the heap? It's always going to start, probably with Thompson and Hoover. And certainly last year, they were the two big ones, and but again, Hewitt's always going to have those guys. Vestavia's going to have those guys. I mean, as much as Robert would like to poor mouth his kids, and I loved his quote last year. Who were they playing? Was it Carver Montgomery who they were playing? And he was talking about those guys were going to go to the SEC, whatnot, and his guys were just going to the fraternity. And I can't remember exactly how he put it, but
that was the gist.
That was the gist of. But again, I mean, it's those, the thing, you look at, and again, that's what makes this region so great is you look at all, just if you're going by the eye test and you look at those guys at Vestavia, Chris has done the same thing with his kids at Mountain Brook. You just think, they're just going to be a step slower, this, that, but they're not. And then those kids don't view themselves that way. I mean, those kids have, when they go out to play, they have, in fact, when I first got to Oak Mountain, our Oak Mountain kids were far more, my first year, we played Stanhope Elmore, we played Prattville. And Stanhope had, good gosh, the defense they had that year in 2012 it's as good as any defenses I've seen since I've been, in the state. They had a linebacker that was, gosh, he was just, I mean, he still makes my teeth rattle, but our kids were much more confident playing those guys than they were, when we played any of the other over the mountain schools. It was like it just, they have that, that all about them. And, so it just is, while these teams may, they may look a little different, from team to team, man, they all play hard and they all get after it. And it's, you better strap it on and be ready to lay the wood, because it's going to be laid to you.
Yeah, you mentioned Robert, like kind of poor mouthing the kids a little bit, like he won't want to hear this, but like there's just like every school, you're going to have guys to replace, key contributors. Vestavia, certainly no different. I made the comment last year that they got this little young quarterback, Charlie Taff. It's Vestavia, so he's a baseball guy too. But he was so electric just as the season went on, through the air and on the ground, that in that up-tempo style that Coach Evans likes to run, if they've got the players around him, I think I said it last year, I said by the time this kid is a senior, I mean that's an all-state lookout potential. Now, if the ceiling is as high as it can get, that's a potential Mr. Football conversation, in my opinion. I mean, he was just that electric as a sophomore in that region. So there's players everywhere in this region. You know that.
Absolutely. I tell people all the time, per capita, Alabama's got they've got as good a players as anybody in the country per capita, maybe better.
They do. So we'll wrap up with this. You're in T County's in Northport, right?
Yes, sir.
How often are you going to hit up City Cafe on game days?
Well, I'm going to have to make it, because they're closed on the weekend. So I'm going to have to get over there for breakfast. Now I don't do lunch on game days, but I'll have to get over there and grab some breakfast on Fridays.
What's the go-to meat and three if it's not a Friday and that superstition, it's like a Thursday afternoon and you can go with the coaches or something. What's the meat and three?
I don't know. Well, you're going to I got to find one now. I mean, my Thursdays are it's just really I try to get home at a decent hour on Thursday, which I typically don't, but I try to get home at a better hour. How about if I say that than normal, and try to be a husband a little bit on Thursday nights. But
there you go.
Well,
just take her to City Cafe. There you go.
Well, but I think don't they close at lunch or something? I'll have to
somewhere in there. I don't know. I win a bunch in college.
No, I do. I'm a Dreamland and I'm an Archibald's guy though, so I do. I like
you're in heaven then.
Places, so
you are in heaven then.
So we'll hit both of them up at for sure. So they
awesome.
My two favorite rib places in the country. So
and they're right there,
right in the same place, same town. One's on one side of the river and one's on our side of the river. So in fact, I ate at Archibald's on Saturday, and I'm on a Zoom. Okay. I'm out to say.
We're
sorry
wrapping up.
about that.
You're good. We're wrapping up. No, you're good. That sounds good, man. Yeah, I didn't even think about Archibald's, but you're in a good spot.
Well, my daughter, when she was a student here, because I didn't, and I know it's been there forever, but she's the one that introduced me to Archibald's. Everybody does Dreamland, but she was the one that introduced me to Archibald's, and and like I can't do any of the chain Dreamlands. I can only do the one, the
original
over there off of Jughead. So that's it.
That's awesome. Well, congrats on the new job. Welcome back. Glad you're back, and good luck to you in Tuscaloosa County over the summer. And I'm sure we'll talk again, heading into the season and all that.
We have reason for you to talk to us. So.
Hey, I'm glad any coaches are in the stratosphere of where I'm at. Like I'll see coaches move and then I don't talk to them as much, but then they get back, find another job in the area, and that's exciting.
It's good to be back.
Glad to have you back, Coach.
Well, thanks, Gary.
Appreciate you taking the time.
No, I appreciate you, and then just again, I appreciate all you and everybody in the media does for our kids. Again, that makes it special too. So thank you.
It's a lot of fun. You're welcome, Coach. Thank you.
All right. See you, buddy.
See you later.